After a long career at Shell Oil, Amoco, and BP, I knew there were stories to be told. Tell the story of the Amoco building in Chicago. That's me in a window washing unit at that level, testing which slabs of marble might fall to the sidewalk. Or I could tell the story of the well we drilled at Shell next to the volcano that sits directly under the Coliseum at Jackson, Mississippi. Well, the blew out 300,000 part per million H2S. But no, I want to tell the crossover story using data from the BP Macondo. The well log, BP drilled down, measured 14.1, equivalent of my weight, about what was prognosed. Drilled down, the resistivity in the mudstones increased, an indication of a crossover. BP would have computed the kinetic change capacity to make sure that it was not a rock type change. They considered pushing the kill button to stop drilling, but they did not. They drilled ahead, crossed over into a regression 12.6 environment. The well lost complete circulation. The wellbore was compromised to the point that directly led to the blowout 12.6. This is the pre-drill plan for the well. Data points marked simply as Isabella that happened to exactly fit what was measured in the well. The Isabella data was never factored into the well plan, never factored in by the drilling engineers. The group that reviewed the well plan, assumed that these were channel sands that lacked the continuity to go 25 miles to Isabella. They did not run a basin model to confirm that. They did make a Centroid correction to suggest the pressures would increase. This is a sketch to show that these are not so much channel sands as they are turbidites that have lateral continuity up to 60 miles, often breached in the top. If we define the center of volume, which at Amoco I call the centroid, then below the centroid, the reservoir is sucking in hydrocarbons from all directions, popping off the top. I modeled this with a physical model when I was with Amoco at the School of Mines in Idaho. A fish tank with manometers to measure the pressure, filled with heavy water. Easier to see in a cartoon sketch, filled with calcium bromide to simulate the heavy overburden. Manometers to measure the pressure at the top and bottom. The pressure profile is exactly what we would expect. At the centroid, the pressures are equal. Pop a hole in the reservoir, no flow in and out. For the triangle, simulates a pie slice out of an anticline. The centroid is 1/3 up. So the drillers know you drill at the base of a reservoir and expect a crossover into a regression and a compromised wellbore. Now to the Macondo. This is a sketch from a basin model run at the University of Texas after the blowout. BP considered only the block in red. That is, no lateral continuity outside that block. And if that's the case, with no continuity, then the reservoir pressure will be the same as that in the mudstones above it. And BP could compute the pressure in the mudstones from seismic. If they had considered blocks that big, including the Isabella, they would have predicted 12.6, not 14 plus. Now, it's complicated. If there was a fault that broke to continuity, then BP would have been correct. And the point here is that we can compute the pressure in that system if the reservoir is breached at the apex, even without the Isabella data, if we have good fracture pressure gradient data. And we do. This is 126 leak-off tests from Mississippi Canyon, the same area that Macondo was drilled into. Data points vary in depth and water depth from 3,000 to over 7,500. All the data points are adjusted to the 6,500 foot water depth at the apex. This is done in PressGraph software that I wrote at Amoco that BP picked up with a certain amount of enthusiasm. Clicking a button converts it all to equivalent mud weight. It converts the straight line to a curved line, pixel by pixel. Now we can go in at the depth of the apex and get a frac gradient of 13.3. And now go back 13.3 frac gradient. If it's breached, and there are seeps at the seafloor in this area, then we can assume the reservoir pressure is 13.3 and compute very easy what it would be at a depth of 18,100. Realizing that any place along the horizontal line, the hydrostatic pressure in the reservoir will be the same. And that calculation is simple. We simply compute the pressure at 15,000, which is gradient times vertical interval, 13.3 times 15,000. Don't worry about the units for a moment. Then we add on the incremental pressure from the water column. And we know the density of water per well, 8.95 times the incremental difference. That gives us the pressure. Again, don't worry about the units, that falls out in the wash. The mud weight then is pressure divided by true vertical depth, KB 12.6. Almost exactly what was measured in Isabella. And that concludes the crossover story. Now, for the rest of the story on the marble on the Chicago building. Amoco decided to replace all 44,000 slabs of marble we granted for safety reasons, cost of $60 million. Took some of the marble to make monuments, to make momentums. And me, all of my Spider-Man fame disappeared. Now for the rest of the story on the Volcano. The blowout well breached off. All of the gas with H2S flowed into the freshwater sands. Producing gas from the water wells, which turned out to be sweet. All of the H2S was sequestered by iron in the formation. Shell was able to develop a method to drill a relief well to kill it. The same method used to kill the Macondo. They drilled some production wells, built a plant, and flooded the world's market. In conclusion, the Natalie story. Natalie would testify after the blowout that the Macondo crossed over, became a well from hell, breathing in and out. Her husband was in the cohort 11 who died in the Deepwater Horizon. Their bodies never found. Natalie would walk the beach, I can picture, stepping over the tar and the dead animals, searching for her husband's hard hat. She would recognize it because he had written inside with a indelible pen the date of their marriage and the birthday of the 3-year-old. She would remember that he told her drilling, working on the Deepwater Horizon, gave him life. That he worried that someday it would take his life. The Deepwater Horizon was never meant to drill the Macondo. It was a substitute that was moved in when the first rig was damaged by a hurricane. And that's the end of the story.